if Manchester City can go out and find a forward, why can't Arsenal? Can you understand, James, why Arsenal fans are so frustrated?
Completely understand. If you look at Mikel Arteta's track record since he's arrived at the club, Gabriel Jesus, the only out-and-out striker, and technically you'd probably say he's not necessarily a full-on striker, is he? He plays out wide a lot, so he hasn't really done that. He's bolstered his squad elsewhere. Now, what I would say, look, to counteract a lot of the talk at the moment, last season, Arsenal, without a striker, so to speak, scored 5 goals fewer than Manchester City, who had the most lethal striker in the Premier League. Season before, 6 goals fewer than Manchester City, who won the league. The goals have been spread around the side. Now, there's always going to be focus after you've read the stats. Was it 40-odd shots, only 1 goal in the last 2 games? It's not great. It's not a great record, but Kai Havertz, yes, OK, he's had a difficult week, so to speak. He might not be necessarily that #1 striker, but he still scored 7 goals this season. Let's talk about Benjamin Sesko. He scored 7 goals this season as well. So it goes back to what Diamond says about the right player. All Arsenal fans will want a striker. Absolutely. They want that clinical player. And actually, the word clinical is something that Mikel Arteta has spoken about so much, particularly over the last couple of years. And every time I've sat down and spoke to him, it always crops up. And he always demands out of his players to be more clinical. They have proved over the last couple of seasons they've done that pretty well in comparison to Manchester City. This year, it seems to be just highlighting it that much more. But wanting a striker is one thing. Getting a striker is a completely different thing. And again, do Arsenal fans want Arsenal to rush this and just grab someone in?
But it's not a rush. This has been window after window after window. We've spoken about Arsenal getting a striker.
They will be looking at that. This will be in their plans. As Dharma said, they do have long-term plans where they're constantly reviewing and looking at the availability of certain players. Now, that might be a Victor Gyökeres, who's lighting it up for Sporting, potentially looking at his next move, but that unlikely will be this month. But if they're getting word that maybe a player like Gyökeres is available in the summer, they're going to wait until the summer to get him. So there needs to be an element of a
better chance of winning the Premier League. Manchester City, who've dominated it 6 out of the last 7 years, are off it. Arsenal fans must be thinking, this is our chance. Get someone who can stick it in the net. And they haven't done it.
Totally agree. If they can do, they will do. But if that player's not available and they can't get the deal done, then they can't get the deal done. They certainly should be trying, though. I totally agree with you on that. They should be trying. They have got an opportunity, and they are trying. There's no doubt about it. Yeah, we're not saying they're not dipping into the market.
Arsenal aren't just sitting. They aren't just let the transfer window elapse. We're not looking. Of course they're looking. Every big club looks, but at the end of the day, when a season finishes, no club worth their salt is going into the summer thinking, do you know what? Let's go massive in January. They don't do that. They look summer transfer windows 1, 2, 3 years ahead. And that's what Arsenal will be doing. You could argue it's time to react because of the injuries that they've got.
It's been time and time and time again, Arsenal fans are saying.
What Mikel Arteta will do, though, and he's maintained this, is that he will look within first, within the squad. What is available to his squad? Raheem Sterling has just come back from injury, and he can play along the front three. Ethan Nwaneri, he's injured at the moment, but he is going to come back sooner rather than later. Admittedly, Bukayo Saka and potentially Gabriel Jesus are slightly more longer term. But Arsenal are a big club. So let's take a step back here. It's not like they're just sitting there in a January transfer window and not talking about this. They will have targets. Both, they'll have looked at a short-term option, they looked at a long-term option as well. If it is to be a long-term target, which would probably require a bit of money to be spent, then it's likely that that player they would look at as coming straight into the team and strengthening the team, or at least providing great competition to those players that are there already. If it's to be a short-term option, then you would think that they would want to have someone come in to improve the squad, so that if there is an injury to the front three that they've got at the moment, that gap in quality between who comes in at the moment and the new recruit is going to be closed. Arsenal are definitely looking. Make no mistake about it, but it is easier said than done.
Well, they wouldn't have if they had a decent penalty taker as well. I mean, if Odegaard scores the penalty, we're not even discussing that now, because Arsenal probably go on to win the game and maybe go on and extend the lead, because United then have to come out of the shape and it changes the context of the game. Mikel Arteta will always have this argument where he wants more goals from other players, and that's been his argument for a long time now, and not being overly heavily reliant on one single player, because his argument would be then is, if that player gets injured, where does that leave us as a team? We're so reliant on one player that where them goals going to be spread out elsewhere. So I get both sides to it. I do think if you are going to be a team that competes for both the Champions League and the Premier League, I think you do need a goal scorer within your team that is going to get you the goals to turn games like that single-handedly or given an opportunity. So the hard thing is that Arsenal have invested an awful lot of money over the last few years within the squad, and I think he's almost said it, is that he's not sure how much they've got to spend or whether there is money to spend in January, but his hands are very tied at the moment with the injuries that they've got.
We're going to write off the season. Yeah, you're essentially. I think Arsenal fans deserve more than that. With the planning that should have been done, and the praise that the likes of Edu was getting before he's left the football club, alongside Arteta and other people who make the decisions at Arsenal, with the praise they were getting and adulation they were getting, this to me seems like poor planning. This has not been a problem that has just reared its head because of a couple of injuries. Like Kwaku said, Arsenal have been in need of this type of player for a while. So I think Arsenal fans will be. While I see where Joby's coming from in respect to wait for the one you want, but at the end of the day, they've had players like Trossard come into the football club in January to help give people a boost, and it worked in that moment, in that time. There's value out there in the market. KwaratsKhelia, I understand he might be going to PSG, etc., but was available. Victor Osimhen, there's something that could be done. Vlahovic, who Arsenal were chasing only a couple of years ago.
KwaratsKhelia, the kind of player Arsenal should be looking at?
I don't see why not. A top level attacker, but right now that would give them a boost in terms of the player that he is. But it's unrealistic. They just have to get a forward, a striker. They need somebody who is going to, they're going to be able to bank on hitting the net more times than not, Molly. And it's been really, really difficult for them. But Arsenal fans won't buy this because at the end of the day, this has been something they've needed for a while.